In the sweltering heat of a golden Burkina afternoon, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood by the tattered window of his modest home in Ouagadougou, deep in thought. Tall and resolute, his eyes traced the horizon where the distant dust of everyday life met the promise of untold futures. For years, Ibrahim had served as a bedrock of both honor and duty, a leader whose reputation was as intricate as the nation he so dearly loved. Yet today, with the weight of his decision pressed upon him like a looming storm, his heart throbbed with a bittersweet mixture of hope, pain, and trepidation. In his hand, nearly crumpled and worn with age, rested a small envelope. Within lay a letter that was destined to rewrite the story of Burkina Faso. Ibrahim recalled the day he first donned his uniform, a uniform that signified not only honor but sacrifice as well. Raised inside the comforting arms of an ever-resilient community, his childhood was marked by stories of heroism, resistance, and relentless hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The elders had spoken of ancient warriors whose valor had lit the dark nights of despair, and as a young boy, Ibrahim had listened wide-eyed to every recounted tale. It was amid these stirring narratives that the seeds of his destiny had been sown. Now, as he prepared to leave behind all that he had known, those long-held ideals rushed back to him like a fervent tide. His submission of the farewell letter was not merely an act of departure, it signified the intertwining of memories and responsibilities, a promise to both honor the past and embrace an uncertain future. In the days preceding this solemn moment, whispers of change had ebbed and flowed through Burkina. The political realm had become a labyrinth of allegiances and betrayals, where every smile concealed a secret, and each handshake carried an unspoken pact. For Captain Traoré, navigating these treacherous waters had become a personal ordeal, a struggle between the ideals of loyalty to his nation and the necessity of change that he knew lay ahead. As the leader who had often taken on the mantle of a unifier, Ibrahim felt torn between his own fierce sense of duty and the inexorable pull of destiny. It was in this state of inner turmoil that he had resolved to write the letter, a solemn ode filled with heartfelt regrets, a detailed account of past deeds both commendable and regrettable, and an earnest missive aimed at mending shattered hearts. In his reflection, Ibrahim remembered the distant echoes of battle cries and the clashing of swords, a metaphoric reminder of the internal conflicts which had defined Burkina's troubled history. He recalled his late mentor, Colonel Amadou, who had once told him that every nation must experience heartbreak to understand love truly, that every departure, however painful, rung with the potential for rebirth. There was a time when Colonel Amadou's wisdom had offered the captain solace during the bleakest nights. Now, such wisdom pulsed in his veins as he penned the words that would send shockwaves across the country. The letter was to be his epitaph, a ledger of all his battles fought not just on distant fronts but within the very recesses of his soul. Every word on that fragile sheet bore the solemnity of a hero bidding farewell to the land that had witnessed his triumphs and despair alike. It was akin to a song sung in a minor key, a melody laced with regret, remorse, and the inexorable acceptance that the time for change had come. As he meticulously wrote every line, it was as if the letter itself absorbed the essence of Burundi's spirit, capturing the pain of lost eras and the hope of times yet to be born. He wrote about the days when the air was thick with promise, when every sunrise had held the possibility of a better tomorrow, and he admitted there were moments when he felt his own heart shatter under the weight of undiscovered destinies. His ink flowed with honesty, recounting events that had altered his life, moments when pride clashed with duty, when the bravery of his convictions had wavered under the oppressive heat of sacrifice. Over the weeks that led up to that fateful afternoon, the entire nation gripped its collective breath in anticipation. In the smoky cafés of Ouagadougou, amongst the bustling markets, and under the sprawling ancient baobabs, people debated with fervor the implications of Captain Traoré's decision to retire from his active post. Some saw it as a betrayal, a final unraveling of the fragile thread that bound them to a once glorious past. Others perceived it as a necessary cleansing, a symbolic act that would pave the way for new leadership and fresh perspectives. Families huddled together discussing what the future might hold, teachers explained the transformation in history lessons, and elders lamented the inevitable passing of a torch that had illuminated even the darkest corners of the country. On this particular day, the climate of uncertainty coexisted with ardent hope. Ibrahim, resolute yet visibly shaken, gathered his small circle of loyal aides in the modest living room of his home. Light streamed through a cracked window, revealing shadows on the wall that danced as if they, too, were preparing for his departure. In that moment, every word he spoke was laden with significance. Drawing on memories of shared hardships and victories, he recounted the times when his unwavering belief in Burkina's potential had been the sole beacon of integrity in times rife with deception. His voice, though firm, trembled with emotion as he expressed gratitude to those who had walked beside him in both battle and peace. He spoke of the sacrifices made by countless souls, a tribute to every citizen who had contributed to the tapestry of a nation striving for unity. His aides listened in rapt silence, their expressions ranging from deep sorrow to quiet admiration. Some partners in arms recalled clandestine meetings under starless skies, others remembered the secret laughter that echoed in the corridors of government offices. As the conversation wove between recollection and foresight, it became clear that the captain's departure was going to mark a turning point in the nation's saga. Conversations meandered from nostalgic recollections of past glories to bittersweet farewells, each note painting a picture of a homeland in the throes of transformation. Each sentence Ibrahim uttered was akin to a farewell note to a cherished friend, a friend who had witnessed every breakthrough, every bitter defeat, and every flash of brilliance. As the day wore on, the streets outside brimmed with a high level of anticipation. Murmurs of a national event had trickled into every home, reaching even the remotest villages lying at the country's periphery. From the buzzing metropolis to the quiet hamlets at the border, citizens prepared to witness history being forged. A sense of solemn jubilation and collective catharsis hung in the air. At long last, as the clock struck the hour of dispatch, Ibrahim folded the letter carefully, sealing it with wax, a final emblem of commitment to the ideals he had championed. The captain's face, once brimming with determination, now wore a contemplative mask as although he knew that his part had come to an end, his legacy would live on. A convoy of well-wishers had gathered outside his residence, their faces a mix of defiance and hope. There was an exhilarating tension permeating the atmosphere, a subtle understanding among them that this was not an end but rather a new genesis for Burkina Faso. Ibrahim stepped out, each stride heavy with memories interlaced with the bright promise of transformation. His eyes moved over the crowd as if seeking silent benedictions from every soul present. He acknowledged nods and tears, each a token of the sacrifices and struggles that had woven their way through the heart of this vibrant nation. Beyond the immediate crowd, the entire nation was beginning to absorb the gravity of the hour. The media, though respectful, buzzed with anticipation. Journalists, whose pens had once chronicled the rise of a legendary captain, now prepared to capture the bittersweet farewell in words that could scarcely contain the historic magnitude of the moment. The letter, with its simple yet profoundly potent message, was set to be delivered to the president's office as a symbolic transmission of both gratitude and regret. It contained secrets of battles, testimonies of lost loves, confessions of mistakes made in the fire of patriotism, and an impassioned call for renewal. Its contents made no distinction between personal atonement and societal rejuvenation, they were inextricably merged into one tumultuous note as vibrant and as volatile as the spirit of Burkina itself. Even as the president's aides rushed across the streets with the sealed envelope, the captain took one last look at the city that had cradled him in innocence and nurtured him into a warrior. He recalled the spirited debates in sunlit village squares, where elders imparted tales of ancien glories, and young hearts, unburdened by cynicism, had dreamed dreams far grander than confinement allowed. In that familiar mosaic of voices and dreams, the captain saw not just the legacy of a nation but the immeasurable potential waiting to be reborn. He remembered laughing with children who were unreachable in their simplicity, playing beneath the broad skies of an unblemished earth, and feeling the undying hope that pulsed in every heartbeat of Burkina. Far away from the throngs of celebrants and mourners, an old man who had once served under Ibrahim watched thoughtfully from his humble garden. His eyes, clouded by years yet burning with a youthful passion for change, reflected memories of loyalties and struggles long past. He murmured to the wind, whispering blessings and casting gentle curses at the irretrievable moments of faded glory. In that quiet solitude, the man grasped the solemn meaning of the captain's farewell, understanding that every ending was the precursor of a new dawn. The old man's thoughts were carried on the desert breeze, a silent prayer for a future where the wounds of the past were healed by the salve of hope. As Ibrahim's motorcade rolled slowly down the main boulevard, flag wavers on both sides of the road saluted his departure with reluctant smiles and tears glistening under the relentless sun. Cameras flashed furiously, attempting to freeze in pixels the poignant moment in time when a historical chapter was being closed. Each flash was as transient as a heartbeat, but collectively they served as the final epitaph of a beloved figure. The letter itself became a symbol, a vessel carrying every individual hope and every shared sorrow. True to his nature as both a warrior and a poet, Ibrahim Traoré bestowed upon his audience a demonstration of vulnerability, the archetypal hero who dared to confide his innermost regrets. His personal journey, writ large in that single piece of paper, bridged the gap between the remnants of a painful past and the promise of a redeemed future. The journey out of the city felt endless to him. Every passing kilometer was stitched with the recollections of personal failures, battles fought on foreign soils, and the quiet moments of compassion that defied the harsh realities of war. Every road sign, every roadside vendor selling steaming cups of millet tea, was a reminder of life's undulating path, an affirmation that every loss might potentially be the foundation for greater triumphs. Ibrahim's eyes were fixed forward, yet his mind was drifting back to the mortal scars etched on his soul. The amalgamation of proud laughter and searing grief was as palpable as the arid wind that swept across the barren landscapes. It was in that harmonious dissonance that he found solace, a solace found only when one reconciles with one's past to embrace an inevitable future. In a small roadside shrine, near the edge of town, Ibrahim paused briefly. Beneath the shadow of an ancient baobab tree, he remembered having taken an oath many years ago, a promise made to a land that had seen both the blossoming of youth and the bitter taste of defeat. At that moment, the diverse voices of Burkina seemed to converge, the whispers of forgotten ancestors echoed through the rustling leaves, and the fierce struggles of the present merged with ancient lore. There, in that timeless space, the captain felt the full magnitude of the lonely journey he had undertaken, a journey not solely of physical distance but of the soul. He unwrapped the letter for a final, private glance. Every word laid bare his innermost reflections, a brilliant tapestry woven with threads of valor, guilt, and the unyielding resolve to see Burkina freed from the chains of its painful history. The fragrance of the earth, damp after an occasional rain, crowned this quiet moment with a profound sense of acceptance. From that solitary shrine, Ibrahim resumed his journey with a determination now tempered by introspection. The highways of Burkina, flanked by rugged hills and sprawling fields, seemed almost enchanted in the soft glow of the late afternoon. People lined by the wayside, startled by the gentle rumble of the motorcade, recognized in his silent visage the gravity of a transformative era. Even the distant rhythms of a lone drumbeat echoed the heartbeat of an ancient civilization, a pulse that signified both mourning and renewal. Each mile drawn behind him was a silent farewell to the chapter that had defined his life, and yet, simultaneously, a preamble to an unfolding saga that promised to reshape the destiny of a nation. Ibrahim's route wound through towns steeped in history, each holding secrets of battles waged, dreams shattered, and the unquenchable thirst for freedom. In the eye of perseverance, every hut, every trampled footpath, was a reminder that destiny is forged in the crucible of struggle. The captain's memories intermingled with the land itself, as if every grain of dust carried the wisdom of centuries. He recalled childhood lessons, stories recited by his grandmother under the soft lullaby of a starlit night, where the valor of heroes was celebrated, and sorrow was but a transient shadow against the brilliance of hope. It was this profound tapestry that had inspired him to accept the mantle of leadership even when it meant enduring enormous personal sacrifice. At a dusty crossroads on the outskirts of a forgotten village, Ibrahim encountered a small group of people gathered around a communal fire. Their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and respect, as they recognized the air of both triumph and tragedy that cloaked the captain. Without hesitation, he joined them, settling silently on an aged wooden bench. Gathered around, the villagers shared tales of their ancestors while casting wistful glances at the sky, their eyes reflecting both loss and longing for continuity. In their weathered faces, Ibrahim saw the very soul of Burkina, resilient despite scars, yet yearning for a future that could mend the fractures of a turbulent past. As he listened, the captain discovered that every person in that small circle possessed a unique story of endurance. One woman, whose eyes shone with quiet determination, recalled how she had lost everything in the relentless march of time. Another man spoke softly of a youth stolen by conflict, where dreams had flickered like dying embers. Each narrative was a chapter in the collective autobiography of a people who had weathered mighty storms. In this spontaneous communion, Ibrahim recognized that the farewell he was about to articulate was not solely his own, it was a farewell shared by every citizen whose life had been intertwined with the soaring victories and crushing failures of Burkina. Their voices, though subdued by the weight of life's relentless hardships, harmonized with his own, creating an anthem of both lament and luminous hope. It was during these hours of quiet exchange that Ibrahim shared fragments of his own memories. He recounted the harrowing days when the nation was enshrouded by the specter of endless conflict, when the blood of the innocent stained the soil and each sunrise was met with hushed prayers for deliverance. His narration was tender yet unflinching, a stark reminder of how every battle waged in the name of progress came at a heartbreaking cost. As he spoke, the flames danced in the twilight, casting elongated shadows that intertwined with the fragile images of past glories and today's uncertain prospects. Every sentence Ibrahim uttered was layered with emotion, the pain of a heart forced to say goodbye, and the cautious optimism that perhaps, one day, new leadership might arise from the ashes. The discussions carried on into the early hours of the evening, where the villagers and the captain found themselves united by a subtle yet enduring bond of hope. The tales they exchanged were cathartic, unburdening each soul in the shared intimacy of regret and reverence. In that fleeting gathering, the captain's farewell letter, now sealed and weighted down by time, emerged as a symbol that even the most painful departures are fertile grounds for the seeds of change. The heartfelt words inscribed on that letter were more than a simple goodbye, they were an invitation to future generations to carry forward the legacy of compassion, resilience, and relentless determination. Leaving the small assembly with a heart full of new resolve, Ibrahim continued his journey as the evening sky blazed with the indigo hues of twilight. The country seemed to hold its breath, suspended in a liminal space between what had been and what might be. Every lamplit street and every whisper of the passing wind spoke of transformation, urging him to carry forward the torch of hope ignited in quiet moments of grief and remembrance. In that incandescent moment of parting, the captain was acutely aware that the history he had helped shape was now in the hands of millions, a nation whose destiny would be sculpted by both the scars of old battles and the beautiful promise of tomorrow. Travelers along the roadside waved quietly, offering nods of quiet farewell as if they too recognized that a respected era was drawing to a close. Ibrahim's vehicle traversed long, unending lanes of dust and memory, with each mile instilling in him a sense of both melancholy and renewal. His thoughts meandered like the meandering river that eventually cut through the dusty plains. In its gentle flow lay the energy to wash away the residue of centuries-old sorrows. In the stillness of the journey, he pondered the moments when destiny met opportunity, a fragile intersection where pain met hope, and endings merged with beginnings. His farewell letter, safely tucked away in the depths of his satchel, was both a memoir of a man's journey and the harbinger of a nation's rebirth. As midnight approached and the dusty horizon dissolved into an endless tapestry of stars, Ibrahim found himself steering along a familiar stretch of road that led to the headquarters of the Ministry of Defense. In those wan and silent hours, he recalled that each secret kept in the quiet spaces of the heart was prone to stir revolutions when finally set free. The captain's mind wandered back to those turbulent countless nights where the burden of decisions had been too heavy to ignore, and the unresolved echoes of past transgressions had gnawed at his soul. The letter had become his final act of courage. In its well-chosen words were the confessions of a man who had walked the long road of sacrifice, whose every heartbeat was entwined with the love for a nation under duress. His thoughts danced along the razor's edge between regret and hope, while the night, with its silken veil of stars, whispered promises of redemption. Upon arriving at the ministry, the heavy steel doors yawned open to receive him. In that solemn entrance, a procession of military dignitaries and high-ranking officials awaited their revered captain with a mixture of solemn respect and silent relief. The corridors echoed with memories of a bygone era, murmurs of loyalty and stories of sacrifices shared across whispered conversations. In the main hall, bright lights cast elongated shadows as they illuminated portraits of former heroes. It was here that Ibrahim Traoré was to deliver his farewell letter, a solemn gesture that symbolized both the irreversible transformation of a storied life and the hopeful end of an era. The present moment had reached the point where every heartbeat, every tear, and every whispered prayer had converged to witness this defining farewell. Before stepping forward, Ibrahim paused in the grand foyer, closing his eyes to absorb the significance of the place that had been a bastion of hope and dedication. Deep in the recesses of his memory, he recalled the early days of his service, the fervent ideals that had driven him through dangerous terrains, and the moments of joy witnessed in the fleeting laughter of comrades. Now, as his shadow mingled with the glow of timeless portraits, he recognized that the collective spirit of Burkina was an eternal force, one that would soar high above the ephemeral confines of any mortal departure. With measured steps and a voice that trembled between finality and possibility, Ibrahim ascended the steps to the podium where an assembly of officials, soldiers, and dignitaries waited. The room fell into a hushed silence as the captain's presence filled every corner. In that quiet suspension of time, he delivered a stirring speech, a heartfelt account of a journey long traveled and sacrifices immeasurable. Each sentence was a precious blend of nostalgia, honest admissions of missteps, and the potent determination to foster a better future. He spoke of a nation that had withstood storms, embraced its wounds, and was now poised at the threshold of transformation. The sincerity in his tone resonated with every individual in the room. Together, they shared an unspoken vow to preserve the dignity of an era and nurture the aspirations of tomorrow. After concluding his speech, Ibrahim carefully did the unthinkable. He placed the sealed farewell letter into the waiting hands of a trusted aide. The act was both symbolic and visceral, an irreversible exchange that closed one chapter even as it beckoned the dawn of another. There was no grand gesture of theatrical fervor, it was a quiet exchange that spoke of timeless truths, that every end, however painful, holds within it the genesis of something new. The aide, eyes moist with unspoken understanding, accepted the letter as if it were a sacred relic. In that instantaneous moment, the hearts of millions, overlooked in the grandeur of ceremonies yet united in shared sentiment, shattered and reassembled in the hope that Burkina would rise again as a phoenix born from the ashes of forgotten tragedies. In the days that followed, newspapers across Burkina splashed the news of the captain's departure on their front pages. Headlines spoke of a hero taking his final bow, and editorials waxed poetic over the fine line that separated sacrifice from despair. Social media buzzed with the impassioned notes of citizens whose lives had been forever altered by his service. Every letter was dissected, every phrase analyzed. While some found solace in the act of farewell, others mourned the close of an era marked by courage and relentless fortitude. In the hearts of many, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not merely a soldier or a custodian of regret, he was a living symbol of hope, a reminder that every farewell, no matter how wrenching, was the whisper of a new beginning. In quiet homes and grand public squares alike, the captain's legacy was instilled with a fervent intensity. Children who had grown up hearing tales of heroic deeds imitated his steadfast posture in play, and elders recounted the great battles he had fought, sometimes in hushed tones, sometimes aloud, each recollection a thread woven into Burkina's monumental tapestry. For every tear that fell was counterbalanced by a spark of hope, a belief in the endless cycle of endings giving way to beginnings. The nation had been gripped by indescribable emotions as tears shed for a man who had been a beacon, and in every lament lay a promise to carry forward the dream of a nation reborn. Meanwhile, in the quiet solitude of his new sanctuary beyond the borders of Burkina, Captain Ibrahim Traoré embraced a reflective isolation. At a small wooden desk in a modest room bathed in the soft glow of a solitary lamp, he reread the farewell letter, all too aware that its words would echo in the hearts of generations to come. He thought back to the battles. The ones fought on gritty, dirt-laden fields and those that erupted in the secret recesses of his own doubts. Every recollection was a study of mortality and legacy. Ibrahim knew all too well the power of forgiveness, both of oneself and of a nation that had weathered relentless storms. In that secluded haven, he began to understand that his letter was more than a farewell to a nation, it was an existence distilled into words, an invocation of hope, a goodbye to sorrow, and an invitation for the future to emerge from the ruins of unspoken history. The seasons turned as life continued in quiet, measured rhythms. Captive in the silence of his new retreat was the sound of distant memories that reminded Ibrahim of his youthful ardor, the resilience of a spirit that refused to submit to destiny's harsh decrees, and the vibrant pulse of a Burkina that refused to forget its legacy. Day after day, he mulled over every word he had written, every inked phrase that had bled in love and regret. Yet he found solace in recalling that the shattered hearts of millions could be mended by the simple, persistent beat of hope. With each sunrise, a new narrative unfurled outside his window, a nation slowly embarking on a journey of renewal, where every tear was the seed of a future replete with promise. Months passed since that somber day at the ministry. In the distant corridors of political power, debates simmered over the legacy of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Some politicians clung to old allegiances, mourning what they believed was a betrayal of the old guard. Others hailed the captain's letter as the key to unlocking a new era of reform and renewal. In quiet backrooms and conference halls, strategies were devised and alliances forged in the hope of propelling Burkina into a future untarnished by corruption and despair. Ibrahim's departure, though a personal loss to him, had set in motion a chain reaction, a rapid evolution in the hearts and minds of a nation finally willing to re-examine its painful past and rewrite its future. One crisp morning, a group of young activists, inspired by the captain's brave vulnerability, gathered in a burst of passionate determination outside the very building where the farewell letter had been received. Their voices, united in a clarion call for reform, recalled the stirring words of Captain Traoré, the very words that had broken their hearts only to fill them with inspiration. They carried banners depicting ancient symbols of hope and modern emblems of progress, weaving together the old and the new into a tapestry of collective resilience. To these youngsters, the letter was the spark that would ignite a revolution of thought, a call to reclaim dignity in a way that only a deeply transformed society could truly appreciate. As the years slowly turned into a new chapter of Burkina's history, the legacy of Captain Ibrahim Traoré became fabled in the annals of time. Statues were raised in his honor in quiet parks and near bustling squares. Murals depicting his stoic visage adorned the walls of public buildings, each stroke of paint echoing a sentiment of respect and everlasting gratitude. In schools, his story was recounted in lessons as a testament to the power of sacrifice and the profound necessity of change. Even as political powers came and went, the captain's humble letter, a document so potent that it had broken millions of hearts, remained a touchstone for every citizen yearning for integrity and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. In an intimate gathering in a bustling community hall, an elderly professor recounted the day when the letter had been first unveiled to the nation. His voice, trembling with emotion yet imbued with the warmth of cherished memories, narrated how that single act had transformed despair into hope. He described how Captain Traoré's words had transcended the realm of mere politics and entered the hearts of every individual, be they of humble origins or lofty dreams. The professor talked about the letter as if it were a living being, a messenger that bridged a painful past and the bright, uncertain horizon of an ever-changing Burkina. His audience, many of whom had witnessed the captain's heroic deeds firsthand, sat in silence as if absorbing the very syllables of a sacred hymn. In time, the story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man who had once stood as a bulwark against insurmountable odds and later set free a letter that broke millions of hearts, became an inseparable part of Burkina's eternal legacy. Every site he had once trodden, every corridor he had once graced with his determined footsteps, now resonated with a spirit of hope. Communities, torn apart by generations of conflict, had slowly begun to mend themselves, inspired by the captain's heartfelt farewell. The echoes of that transformative act could be heard in the laughter of children playing in open fields, in the quiet hum of persistent artisans reviving ancient crafts, and in the soft murmurs of storytellers recounting the captain's journey under the starlit skies of Burkina. Yet, as with every profound saga, there remain twists and turns in Ibrahim's own narrative that only the annals of destiny could reveal. A discreet letter, different from the farewell missive, found its way to him from an unknown sender. Its contents hinted at secrets buried deep within the corridors of power, revelations that might challenge the very foundations on which he had built his legacy. In the sealed envelope lay a confession from someone he once trusted implicitly. It spoke silently of betrayals committed in the dark recesses where shadows danced and discreet promises were shattered by the harsh light of reality. Ibrahim, though far from the tumultuous world he had departed, found his soul stirred as he slowly deciphered the glimmers of truth sown within those furtive lines. The confession was both an alarm and an opportunity. A last message urging him to ensure that the country he had loved so dearly would not fall prey to the repeating cycle of unhealed wounds and clandestine machinations. Haunted by this newly emerging truth, Ibrahim felt the stirrings of conflict deep within him. Should he remain in exile, safe behind the protective walls of introspection, or should he plunge once more into the labyrinth of political treachery in order to finally secure a future that honored the ideals he had once championed? The question tormented him like a relentless specter, echoing with every heartbeat. It was as if his destiny had not ended with the farewell letter, but was merely gathering strength to surge forth in a different guise. In the solitude of his study, Ibrahim reread both letters, the farewell that had once broken millions of hearts and this fresh, unsettling confession that threatened to reopen old wounds. Each word was a reminder that truth, though often battered and bruised, could not remain concealed indefinitely. His decision was weighed in moments of restless nights and solitary dawns, a choice between the ease of quiet retirement and the perilous path of final redemption. In the dim light of a lonely evening, Ibrahim made his choice. The captain who had given so much to Burkina refused to let corruption and betrayal continue to poison the legacy of his nation. With a heavy yet determined heart, he penned yet another letter, a call for unity and transparency that addressed the sins of the past and heralded the need for restorative justice. This new missive was not a departure but an invitation to reconcile, to purge the old specters that haunted every public whisper and private tear. In his new letter, Ibrahim did not rebuke in bitterness, rather, he offered forgiveness where it was deserved and urged those who had strayed from the righteous path to join him in catalyzing a change that was long overdue. Like a bridge surmounted by hope and redemption, his words flowed with the promise that even the most broken hearts could find solace in the embrace of renewed integrity. The day came when Ibrahim, once more stepping into the public arena, addressed a gathering in the newly renovated National Forum. The atmosphere was charged. This was not merely a political address but a summoning of a spirit that had been dormant for far too long. Among the assembled throngs were young revolutionaries whose eyes sparkled with the audacity of knowing change was possible, and veterans whose weary faces bore testimony to the cost of inaction. Ibrahim's voice resonated powerfully as he read his letter aloud, a letter that laid bare his soul and implored every citizen to reclaim the dignity that had been so painfully eroded. In his address, he recalled the days when every sacrifice was made in the name of unity and progress. He recalled the stinging regrets and the triumphant hopes that had carried him through decades of passion and conflict. His words, potent and raw, acted as a catalyst, a moment when the entire nation collectively exhaled its sorrow and inhaled the promise of a future purified by truth and perseverance. In that defining moment, as the nation listened, a tangible shift swept the assembly and rippled through every remote village, bustling town, and quiet corner of Burkina. The letter, which had once been a final goodbye, was now transformed into an anthem for reconciliation. While retribution and blame had long plagued a society marred by tumultuous histories, Ibrahim's genuine sorrow and unwavering commitment to a brighter future served as a unifying force. His call was simple yet profound, that every tear shed was not just an echo of past grievances, but the first step toward healing the deep scars that had long defined their collective spirit. It was an invocation to every citizen, young or old, powerful or humble, to come forward and rebuild the sovereign ideals that had once been the very lifeblood of the nation. In the ensuing months, Burkina began to change in quiet yet seismic ways. Public forums flourished where diverse voices debated and collaborated, the dissonance of old rivalries gradually giving way to harmonious dialogues. The spirit that Captain Ibrahim Traoré had embodied found new echoes in community projects, grassroots movements, and a renewed insistence on accountability from those in power. Those who had once been silenced by fear or despair now found voices rising in unison to reclaim their history and forge a path toward a transparent and respectful future. It was as if the captain's farewell letter, a document that once broke millions of hearts, had, through the transformative power of truth and reconciliation, woven a renewed tapestry of hope. Ibrahim, though still removed from the central nexus of power, remained a guiding light for those who sought to restore the soul of Burkina. In his twilight years, he kept a quiet vigil over the nation he had loved so fiercely, content to act as a silent mentor to emerging leaders driven by a passion to replace despair with resilient hope. Many would come to his humble retreat seeking guidance, solace, and encouragement, a gentle reminder that true change stemmed not solely from radical measures but also from small, persistent acts of love and forgiveness. Each visitor found, in the captain's measured tone and well-worn eyes, reflections of their own struggles and aspirations. In his presence, the legacy of a turbulent past was acknowledged but never allowed to define the future. Years turned into decades, and the once painful chapters of Burkina's history transformed into lessons remembered with both tender nostalgia and an unbroken resolve to progress. Statues of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, standing in quiet remembrance in golden sunlit plazas, bore witness to a man who had redefined farewell not as defeat but as an opportunity for rebirth. The letter that had been his last goodbye, complete with its murmurs of sorrow and hope, was kept in fragile glass cases in museums dedicated to the nation's enduring spirit. It served as a timeless reminder of the extraordinary burden a single soul may carry, and the extraordinary promise that every end, no matter how heartbreakingly tender, holds within it the seeds of an unyielding future. And so, as the gentle hum of progress echoed through the streets of Burkina, Captain Ibrahim Traoré's legend endured, a testament to the power of honesty, sacrifice, and the unrelenting belief that every departed hero leaves behind a legacy far more potent than his final goodbye. His life had been a perpetual waltz between duty and passion, between regret and hope, and in every measured step, he had embodied the spirit of a nation in constant search of its own salvation. In the eyes of the aging captain, now resting peacefully in the backdrop of his beloved homeland, the horizon was no longer just a demarcation of place but a promise that even amidst the darkest farewells, a new dawn awaits. In closing, the tale of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a narrative woven with triumphs, heartaches, unforeseen twists, and a legacy born of pure, unadulterated humanity, stands as a beacon for every soul that has ever dared to dream beyond the confines of despair. It is a story that speaks to the eternal conflict between duty and destiny, a reminder that in every farewell there lies the whisper of eternal hope, and that in the delicate ink of one man's letter, millions of hearts may find solace, purpose, and the strength to forge a future where light triumphs over shadow.